Dearest listeners, what is more intoxicating than witnessing two souls who believe themselves broken discover they are merely two halves of the same exquisite whole? Today, this author brings you the most extraordinary tale of a duke who could not bear the eyes of society and a lady frozen by those very same gazes. But let us not rush, for the best scandals, like the finest wine, must be savored properly. One must begin, gentle listeners, with the peculiar case of Lord Sebastian Hartfield, Duke of Hartfield. At 30 years of age, His Grace possessed everything society deemed essential: an ancient title, a fortune that would make Croesus weep with envy, estates spanning 3 counties, and a face that had caused more than one debutante to require immediate application of smelling salts. Yet, would you believe, dearest listeners, that this paragon of masculine perfection had not danced a single dance in public for 3 full seasons? This author has it on excellent authority that the Duke suffered from a most unusual affliction. When surrounded by the glittering masses of the ton, His Grace would experience what his physician delicately termed an excess of sensibility. His hands would tremble, his breath would shallow, and that commanding presence would shrink until he resembled nothing so much as a fox cornered by particularly well-dressed hounds. The irony, of course, was that society interpreted his consistent refusal to dance as the height of aristocratic disdain. Lady Pemberton declared just last week that the Duke of Hartfield considered himself above them all, too grand to dance with their daughters, too important to engage in their simple pleasures. If only she knew, gentle listeners, that the poor man spent most balls hiding in the card-room, gripping a glass of brandy like a lifeline, whilst pretending an interest in whist he most certainly did not possess. But I digress. Let us turn our attention to the elder Beaumont sister, Lady Louise, who at 25 had earned herself the most unfortunate sobriquet of the Ice Maiden of Mayfair. This author finds it rather tragic how society mistakes terror for arrogance, does it not? For Lady Louise Beaumont was not cold. She was frozen, quite literally, by the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her. Blessed, or perhaps cursed, with the sort of beauty that poets attempt to capture and inevitably fail, Lady Louise possessed skin like fresh cream, hair the color of midnight silk, and eyes of such a startling violet that more than one young buck had composed execrable verse comparing them to amethysts. Yet for all her beauty, she moved through ballrooms like an exquisite automaton, her smile fixed, her responses limited to the barest minimum propriety allowed. This author witnessed her just last month at the Ashford Ball, standing against the wall like a particularly lovely piece of statuary, whilst her younger sister, the effervescent Miss Penelope Beaumont, charmed a circle of admirers. Where Louise was midnight and frost, Penelope was sunshine and warmth, golden curls, laughing blue eyes, and a giggle that tinkled like champagne glasses meeting in a toast. At 18, she was everything society adored, sweet, accommodating, and utterly without complexity. The cruel irony, dearest listeners, was that while society found Louise cold and Penelope warm, the truth was rather different. Louise felt everything too much. Every glance was a weight, every whispered comment a blade, every social interaction a performance she could never quite perfect. She had learned that if she remained perfectly still, perfectly silent, she could survive these gatherings. Movement attracted attention, and attention for Louise was agony. Meanwhile, sweet Penelope felt, well, rather little at all. Oh, she was not unkind, merely wonderfully, blissfully shallow. She delighted in ribbons and could spend 3 hours discussing the particular shade of pink most suitable for a Tuesday morning call. This author does not judge her for it. The world needs its Penelopes just as much as its Louises. But one could not help but notice the cosmic jest of it all. It was at the Montgomery's spring ball that fate decided to intervene, as fate so often does when two souls have been circling each other unknowingly. The ball was, by all accounts, a tremendous squeeze, the very pinnacle of success in our glittering world. The Montgomery ballroom groaned under the weight of hothouse flowers, the air thick with perfume and pomade, the heat of 500 bodies pressed together in their finest silks and satins. His Grace had attended under extreme duress. His mother, the Dowager Duchess of Hartfield, a woman who could bend steel with her will alone, had issued an ultimatum. He would attend, he would be seen, and he would court someone suitable before the season's end, or she would take matters into her own hands. This author shudders to imagine what those aristocratic hands might arrange. The Duke lasted precisely 17 minutes in the ballroom proper. 17 minutes of his palms growing damp within his gloves, of the walls seeming to press closer with each forced pleasantry, of his cravat tightening around his throat like a silken noose. When Lady Pemberton cornered him with her youngest daughter, a young lady with the unfortunate habit of giggling at everything, including her own name, His Grace excused himself with a mumbled mention of fresh air that fooled absolutely no one. Lady Louise, for her part, had endured 23 minutes. This author kept count. 23 minutes of standing beside the pyramids of lemonade glasses, her spine straight as a poker, her smile painted on like the finest French rouge. Her mother had just begun the familiar dance of presenting her to Lord Worthington, a gentleman whose fascination with her beauty was matched only by his inability to see the woman beneath it. When Louise felt that familiar sensation of drowning while standing on dry land, she murmured something about powder and departed with such practiced grace that her mother barely noticed. This author, however, noticed everything, including the slight tremor in her gloved hands and the way she walked just a touch too quickly to be properly ladylike. Now, gentle listeners, the Montgomery estate possessed a rather magnificent conservatory, a glass paradise filled with orchids and orange trees, jasmine and night-blooming cereus. It was kept locked during balls for obvious reasons. Young ladies and gentlemen, tropical flora, and minimal lighting created a recipe for scandal that even the most liberal hostess could not countenance. But locks, as we all know, are merely suggestions to the desperate. The Duke found it first, having remembered it from a tour years prior, when social gatherings had not yet become instruments of torture. He had procured the key through methods this author shall not elaborate upon. Let us simply say that a footman with gambling debts can be remarkably accommodating. He slipped inside, the sudden quiet like diving into cool water after being aflame. It was there, dearest listeners, in that humid paradise scented with jasmine, that His Grace did something extraordinary. He began to dance. Alone, in the darkness, lit only by moonlight through glass, the Duke of Hartfield waltzed with an invisible partner. His movements were fluid, practiced, beautiful, everything they could not be when the weight of society's gaze pressed upon him. This author must confess, it was rather like watching a caged bird suddenly remember it could fly. He had been dancing for perhaps 5 minutes when the door creaked. His Grace froze mid-turn, his heart pounding with the particular terror of the discovered. But the figure that slipped inside was not an angry hostess or a pursuing mama. It was Lady Louise Beaumont, her violet eyes wide with surprise and something that looked remarkably like recognition. For a suspended moment, they simply stared at each other, two refugees from the same gilded battlefield, each having thought themselves alone in their sanctuary. Then Louise did something that shocked them both. She laughed. Not the practiced titter she employed in company, but a real laugh, soft and rueful. She expressed that she had believed herself the only one who knew about this refuge during balls. The Duke, still frozen in his dancing position, arms wrapped around nothing, might have looked ridiculous. Instead, he looked rather like a classical statue caught in a moment of exquisite vulnerability. Louise moved forward with the eager curiosity of someone who had just discovered they were not alone in the universe. She observed that he had been dancing without anyone watching, without anyone expecting anything of him. The understanding in her voice was so complete, so devastatingly accurate, that His Grace felt something crack in his chest. He confessed that he could dance when no one was watching, when it was just him and the music in his head, and no one expecting him to be the Duke of Hartfield. Louise moved closer still, and in the moonlight, this author could see her face transform. The mask she wore so carefully in public had slipped entirely, revealing something raw and achingly genuine beneath. She expressed her complete understanding, explaining how she too became herself only when no one could see, how she would laugh unguardedly at books in her chambers, dance wildly to no music at all. They stood there, two souls recognizing themselves in each other's fractures, and the air between them fairly crackled with the electricity of profound connection. Then, because fate has always had a theatrical streak, the orchestra's music drifted through the conservatory's windows, a waltz slow and yearning. His grace, moving as if in a dream, extended his hand. Not a command, not an expectation, but an invitation, an offer, a question. Louise looked at his extended hand for a long moment. She confessed, her voice barely above a whisper, that she had not danced properly in 2 years. Not since the Whitmore Ball, where she had frozen completely mid-waltz. 300 people watching as she simply stopped, unable to move, unable to breathe. The humiliation had been so complete that she had sworn never to dance again in public. Sebastian revealed that he understood such paralysis intimately, that there were nights he stood outside ballrooms for hours, trying to force himself through the doors, only to flee back to his carriage like a coward. He admitted he had actually been sick from anxiety before the last Almack's assembly, though his mother believed it was bad fish. Their shared confessions hung in the air between them, two admissions of weakness that somehow, together, felt like strength. This author held her breath as Louise, with a smile that transformed her from ice maiden to something altogether more incandescent, placed her hand in his. They danced, gentle listeners, as neither had ever danced before. Without the weight of watching eyes, without the burden of expectations, they moved together as if they had been doing so all their lives. The Duke's hand at her waist was sure, not trembling. Louise's steps were free, not calculated. They swept through the conservatory, between the orange trees and the orchids, their bodies finding a rhythm that had nothing to do with the distant orchestra and everything to do with the music of recognition between two kindred souls. When the distant music finally stopped, they did not. They continued their silent waltz, dancing to something only they could hear. It was only when Louise accidentally knocked into a potted lemon tree, sending a shower of petals over them both, that they stopped, laughing, both of them actually laughing, as they stood there covered in white blooms like some pagan blessing. Louise suggested they should return, though she made no move to leave. The Duke agreed with equal reluctance to move. They stood there, hands still clasped from the dance, and this author swears the air between them hummed with possibilities. Then, as if by mutual agreement, they separated. Louise moved to the door first, pausing to brush the petals from her hair. Before leaving, she turned back and mentioned that tomorrow would bring the Ashford garden party, noting the greenhouse in the eastern corner where the tour would have moved on to the rose garden by 3 o'clock. She was gone before he could respond, leaving the Duke standing in a shower of lemon blossoms, looking rather like a man who had just discovered the earth was not, in fact, flat. The next day's garden party was, according to all who attended, remarkably unremarkable. The weather held fine, the cucumber sandwiches were properly cut, and the gossip was disappointingly thin. This author, however, positioned strategically near the eastern greenhouse at 3 o'clock, can report that two figures slipped inside within moments of each other. What happened within, one can only imagine. But when Lady Louise emerged 20 minutes later, her usually perfect coiffure showed signs of hasty repair, and there was a bloom in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the unseasonably warm weather. The Duke appeared 5 minutes after, and this author noticed he had missed a lemon blossom petal caught in his cravat. Thus began the most exquisite dance of deception our dear London society has ever failed to notice. At every ball, Lady Louise would maintain her ice maiden facade for precisely 30 minutes before developing a need for air. The Duke would endure exactly 25 minutes before remembering urgent correspondence requiring his attention. And somewhere, a conservatory, a library, an empty music room, they would find each other and dance. Oh, how they danced, dearest listeners. This author, through careful observation and perhaps a bit of harmless following, can report that their secret dances became the stuff of legend. If anyone had known about them, which of course they did not, they waltzed in the Pembertons' abandoned breakfast room. They attempted a quadrille in the Fitzroy's eastern tower, laughing when they realized neither could remember the steps without other couples. But one particularly memorable evening at the Worthington Ball nearly exposed their secret entirely. This author witnessed the heart-stopping moment when Lady Worthington herself, searching for her missing lorgnette, approached the very music room where our lovers were mid-waltz. The door handle began to turn. Louise and Sebastian froze, her back pressed against the wall, his body shielding her from view, both barely breathing. The Duchess's voice could be heard clearly, instructing a footman to check the room. By some miracle, or perhaps the footman's discretion, for servants always know more than they reveal, he reported the room empty and locked. The lovers remained frozen for a full minute after the danger passed, so close that Louise later confessed she could feel his heartbeat through his waistcoat. When they finally moved apart, both were trembling, not from fear, but from the intoxicating proximity forced upon them. They did not dance again that evening, but the look they shared across the ballroom later held more intensity than any waltz. They even, on one occasion, danced in the rain on the Morrisons' roof garden, returning to the ball soaked and separately, with excuses that convinced absolutely no one paying attention, which, fortunately for them, was almost everyone. For you see, while our lovers were dancing in shadows, society had become fascinated with an entirely different romance. The Duke of Hartfield, everyone agreed, was clearly pursuing the younger Beaumont sister. This author confesses to nearly choking on her ratafia when Lady Cowper announced with great authority, "Mark my words, the Duke is absolutely besotted with Miss Penelope Beaumont. Did you see how he ensured she had the best view at the opera last week?" The fact that His Grace had actually been watching Louise in the opposite box through his opera glasses apparently escaped her eagle eye. Lady Jersey contributed her own observation at the Pemberton tea. "His Grace sent flowers to the Beaumont residence 3 times this week. White roses, no less. Such a clear declaration." That the cards accompanying those roses were addressed simply to Miss L.B. was a detail the footman who accepted them wisely kept to himself. Even the formidable Lady Danbury declared at her card party, "That man follows the family like a lovesick puppy." Though why he fixates on the young one when the elder has twice her character is beyond me. Men and their preference for giggling misses. This author bit her tongue to keep from enlightening her. The evidence, according to the Ton's greatest gossips, was overwhelming. Did he not attend every event where Penelope appeared? Did he not always ensure the Beaumont family received invitations to the most exclusive gatherings? Had he not been seen in conversation with Lord Beaumont at White's just last week? That the Duke actually spent these events nowhere near Penelope? That his conversations with Lord Beaumont were about borrowing obscure poetry books? That his ensuring invitations was solely to guarantee Louise's presence? These details were apparently invisible to society's eagle eyes. Miss Penelope, sweet, uncomplicated creature that she was, accepted this narrative with the same cheerful passivity with which she accepted everything. When her friends congratulated her on her impending conquest of the Duke, she would smile and discuss whether duchesses were permitted to wear pink to court. The tragedy, or perhaps the comedy, for this author can never quite decide, was that Penelope had not the slightest interest in the Duke. Her heart, such as it was, belonged entirely to young Mr. Theodore Ashby, the second son of a baronet whose greatest accomplishment was breeding a new variety of tulip. They would spend hours in rapturous discussion about soil composition, while the Ton plotted their separation in favor of the ducal match. Meanwhile, Louise and Sebastian, for in their secret world they had long ago dispensed with titles, were falling deeper into something that transcended mere attraction. This author had the privilege of observing one of their clandestine meetings through a conveniently cracked door at the Montague Ball. They were not dancing that evening, but simply sitting on the floor of the unused study, like children hiding from their governess. Sebastian explained his condition, having researched it extensively, being a man of intellectual bent when not paralyzed by social anxiety. The physician had termed it a nervous complaint, apparently his constitution being too delicate for society's demands. He found it rather embarrassing for a duke, this weakness that made him tremble in crowds. Louise's response was swift and fierce. She insisted there was nothing embarrassing about feeling too much in a world that felt too little. She declared him not broken, but concentrated, like perfume before its dilution for the masses. The look he gave her then, dearest listeners, would have melted the ice caps. When he inquired about her own reasons for hiding behind a facade of ice, she confessed it was terror, pure and undiluted. Every gaze felt like being a specimen under glass. They called her beautiful, as if it were an accomplishment rather than an accident of birth. So she learned to freeze, to give them nothing but surface to examine. Yet with him, she explained, she was not beautiful, but real. She was Louise, who laughed inelegantly, who once consumed an entire plate of petit fours when nervous, who secretly read Gothic novels and wept at every ending. They sat in comfortable silence then, two people who had found in each other the permission to exist without performance. This author may have dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief, purely from the dust in the unused room, you understand. But gentle listeners, as in all the best tales, paradise could not last forever. The Duke's mother, the formidable Dowager Duchess, had grown tired of what she perceived as her son's dithering. She announced to Lord Beaumont that the Duke intended to propose to Miss Penelope at the Hartfield Ball, the last grand event of the season. The Beaumont family was thrown into ecstasy. Mrs. Beaumont ordered a trousseau before the proposal had even occurred. Lord Beaumont began referring to himself as almost father-in-law to a duke after his third brandy. And Penelope. Poor Penelope wept into her pillow each night while maintaining a bright smile each day, her dreams of tulips and Theodore crumbling. Louise, meanwhile, moved through the preparations like a ghost. She helped select her sister's gown, a confession of white silk and seed pearls that made Penelope look like a sacrificial virgin. She listened to her mother's endless chatter about precedents and duchesses and how Louise must be kind to Penelope when she outranked her. She smiled and nodded and died a little more each day. Sebastian was faring no better. His mother had ambushed him with the announcement of his impending proposal while he was still half asleep, securing what she interpreted as agreement, but what was actually stunned horror. By the time he fully understood what had happened, the entire ton knew of his supposed intentions. To deny it now would not only humiliate the Beaumont family, but destroy Penelope's reputation. This author witnessed the Duke's attempt to explain to his mother that he had no intention of marrying Penelope. The Dowager's response was swift and brutal. She invoked the terms of his father's will, the one requiring marriage by 31 or forfeiture of the unentailed properties that provided the majority of his income. The trap was perfectly sprung. Sebastian could not ruin Penelope by withdrawing now, but neither could he bear to marry her when his heart belonged entirely to her sister. The night before the ball, this author happened to be taking air in Hyde Park, purely coincidentally at the exact time and location where Louise and Sebastian had arranged their final meeting. They stood by the Serpentine, two figures wrapped in darkness and despair. Sebastian suggested desperately that they could flee to Gretna Green, to the continent, anywhere. But Louise questioned whether they could destroy Penelope, ruin her family, live as outcasts. He would lose everything. His title, lands, his mother would ensure it. When he insisted he would have her, and she admitted she would have him, she also acknowledged that nothing else would remain, and eventually guilt would poison every moment. They stood in miserable silence, two souls perfectly matched yet perfectly trapped by the very society that had driven them together. Sebastian suddenly requested one last dance, there by the Serpentine, and she agreed. And there, on the banks of the Serpentine, with only the stars and this hidden author as witness, they danced. No music save the wind in the trees, no floor save the damp grass, no audience save the swans. They danced as if the world were ending, which for them, it rather was. The Hartfield Ball arrived with all the pomp the Dowager Duchess could muster. The ballroom was transformed into a fairyland of crystal and silver, every surface gleaming with reflected candlelight. The entire ton was present, eager to witness the proposal that would be the season's culmination. This author, naturally, had secured a position with an excellent view of all relevant parties. Penelope looked beautiful and miserable in equal measure, the white gown making her appear even younger than her 18 years. She stood with her parents, accepting congratulations for an engagement that had not yet occurred, her eyes occasionally drifting to where Mr. Ashby stood among the less favored guests, his face a study in resigned despair. Louise stood beside her sister, wearing deep purple that made her skin glow like alabaster, but her usual mask was cracking. This author could see the fault lines, the slight tremor in her hands, the way she kept touching her throat as if her necklace were choking her. And Sebastian, oh, gentle listeners, the Duke looked like a man approaching his execution. He stood with his mother, who beamed with satisfaction while he stared at something beyond the ballroom, beyond the world itself. The moment approached with terrible inevitability. The orchestra stopped. The Dowager Duchess nodded to the conductor. And then, dearest listeners, they began to play a waltz. But not just any waltz. It was the exact waltz that had been playing the night Sebastian and Louise first danced in the conservatory, the one they had hummed to each other in stolen moments. Their waltz. This author observed Louise's face go white. Sebastian's hands clenched into fists at his sides, and in that moment of perfect, horrible recognition, something snapped. Louise fled. Not gracefully, not subtly, but actually ran from the ballroom, her purple skirts flying behind her like wings. The entire assembly gasped as one. Mrs. Beaumont looked ready to faint. Lord Beaumont turned an alarming shade of puce. But it was Sebastian's reaction that silenced the room entirely. The Duke of Hartfield, who had not danced publicly in 3 years, who could barely manage a conversation in a crowded room, strode across the ballroom floor with the determination of a man who had finally, definitively, run out of fear. He passed Penelope without a glance, ignored his mother's sharp call of his name, walked through 300 members of the ton as if they were mist. This author, along with half the guests, followed at what we hoped was a discreet distance. He found her in the conservatory. Of course it was the conservatory, gentle listeners. Where else could this tale reach its crescendo? Louise stood among the orchids, tears streaming down her face, her carefully constructed facade finally, completely shattered. She confessed she could not watch him propose to her sister, that she was not that strong, not that good. The Duke declared, his voice carrying to the crowd now pressed against the conservatory windows, that he had no intention of proposing to Penelope. The collective intake of breath could have powered a small windmill. Louise turned, her tear-stained face a study in confusion and hope, questioning what would happen with his mother with the announcement. The Duke responded with shocking vehemence that he cared nothing for his mother's plans, nothing for the announcement, nothing for the ton and its expectations. He declared he would rather lose everything and dance with her in poverty than have everything and watch her across ballrooms for the rest of his life. He dropped to his knees then, right there among the orchids and the orange trees, in full view of half of London society. He proclaimed his love for Louise, calling her impossible, brilliant, terrified, and brave, the woman who taught him that hiding together could be its own form of courage. He asked her to marry him, not because it was expected or proper or convenient, but because he loved her with every broken, anxious, imperfect part of his soul. The silence was absolute. 300 members of the ton held their collective breath as Louise looked down at the Duke kneeling before her. Then, with a smile that could have powered all the gaslights in London, she dropped to her knees as well, meeting him at his level as she had always done, and gave her consent with a kiss that would be gossiped about for the next 3 seasons. But the evening's surprises were not finished, dearest listeners. For as the crowd pressed into the conservatory, as the Dowager Duchess pushed through sputtering about propriety and inheritance, sweet Penelope Beaumont did something extraordinary. She announced, in her clear, tinkling voice, that she was delighted for her sister and his grace, as she herself had been desperately in love with Mr. Theodore Ashby since the beginning of the season. She further declared that anyone who thought otherwise had clearly not been paying attention, and wasn't it wonderful that everyone could marry for love? The expression on Mrs. Beaumont's face as she watched both her daughters effectively destroy and remake their futures in the span of 5 minutes was something this author shall treasure forever. Mr. Ashby, bless him, seized the moment and crossed the ballroom to claim Penelope's hand, discussing something about a new hybrid tulip that apparently symbolized unexpected joy. The ton, faced with not 1 but 2 love matches blooming from the wreckage of their carefully laid plans, did what the ton does best. They adapted their narrative. By the next morning, everyone claimed they had always known the Duke preferred the elder sister. Lady Jersey insisted she had seen it from the beginning. Lady Cowper swore she had noticed their secret attachment weeks ago. This author kept her own counsel and simply smiled. The wedding, or rather weddings, for the sisters married in a double ceremony that sent the ton into raptures, took place 6 weeks later. Louise wore lavender, not white, and carried lemon blossoms. Sebastian had composed a waltz for the occasion, which they danced to alone in the center of the ballroom while 300 guests pretended not to cry. Penelope wore pink because she could, and spent her wedding breakfast discussing mulch with her new husband, while her mother required continuous application of smelling salts. The Duke and Duchess of Hartfield became famous for their unusual entertaining style. They would host balls where, halfway through the evening, they would simply disappear. Guests learned to expect it, even find it charming. What they did not know was that the Duke and Duchess would be dancing in their conservatory, or their library, or on their roof, finally free to be themselves in their own home. They had 3 children, all of whom were taught that it was perfectly acceptable to be afraid of crowds, that dancing alone was not madness but freedom, and that sometimes the bravest thing one could do was admit to being terrified. The Dowager Duchess, after the initial apoplexy, discovered she rather enjoyed having a daughter-in-law who understood her son's peculiarities. She was overheard at tea saying that she had always known Louise was the right choice, and anyone who suggested otherwise was clearly misremembering. As for Penelope and her Theodore, they retired to the countryside, where they grew the most magnificent tulips in England, and produced 4 children who could identify soil types before they could properly curtsy. They were blissfully, brilliantly happy in their own simple way. But it is Sebastian and Louise who remain this author's favorite tale. 2 souls who thought themselves broken, who hid from the world in different ways, who found in each other not someone to fix them, but someone to hide with until they were brave enough not to hide at all. This author had the privilege of observing them just last week at the Salisbury Ball. They attended for precisely 1 hour, during which the Duke actually danced 2 dances in public, both with his wife. They were not perfect dances. His hand trembled slightly. She missed a step when someone stared too long. But they danced nonetheless, eyes locked on each other, the rest of the world fading into blessed irrelevance. Then, as the clock struck 11, they simply left. No explanations, no apologies. This author followed, purely for professional purposes, you understand, and found them in the garden, dancing to music only they could hear, the Duchess laughing as the Duke spun her under the stars. And so, gentle listeners, another tale reaches its blessed conclusion. 2 hearts that beat too fast in crowds found they could beat in perfect time together. 2 souls too frightened to dance in public discovered they could dance forever in private. And sometimes, just sometimes, love does not require us to change who we are, but simply to find someone who makes our peculiarities into perfections. This author withdraws until our next encounter, leaving you with this thought. Perhaps we are all dancing alone in conservatories, waiting for someone to find us and say, "Yes, I dance alone too. Shall we dance alone together?" Until then, remember, the greatest scandals often lead to the greatest happiness, and the most broken people often make the most beautiful music together. Your devoted chronicler, Lady Ravenswood.